on April 26th, on Wednesday, it was actually filed on April 25th. A lawsuit was filed by Brittany Abrahams, a former WWE writer. She wrote there from 2020 to 2022. It was against Vince and other WWE executives over alleged racial and gender stereotypes in scripts and wrongful terminations. Things that were in this script here were stuff like Bianca Belair using language that she was not comfortable with, stereotypical language. Apollo Crews using the stereotypical and exaggerated Nigerian accent. There were pitches for Shane Thorne to basically hunt Reggie, and Reggie, who was scripts in NXT, Reggie to escape. There was a love triangle pitch with Mansoor, Aaliyah, and Angel Garza where there was a big secret involved, and the big secret in this was Mansoor was behind 9/11, which these were the pitches they're in there. The lawsuit, which is like 30 something pages long, I believe it's 31 pages long, had a lot of messages from like Slack conversations, like text messages, things like that. It was against certain writers, like Ryan Callahan was a big one that was on there. And so a big lawsuit that has come out. We'll see how it goes. But right now we're going to talk more about this. We're going to be joined by a former WWE writer. He's also written for the LA Times. He's worked with The Ringer. He is Dave Schilling. Dave, how you doing, man?
Good. How are you?
Good. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Jeremy, kick us off, please.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if your mic was muted, Joel.
It was. I accidentally muted myself.
This is a great transition, guys.
Yeah, we really hit it.
Roderick Strong, right into lawsuits. Dave, so first question is, when you saw this lawsuit as a former writer, what were your thoughts on all of it?
Well, my thoughts were, I think, probably similar to a lot of people who are people of color who work for WWE, which is, I mean, not terribly surprising that someone would be upset about some of the things that they experienced at the company. It's not the best place to work if you are a person of color, you're a woman, you're LGBTQ. Like, it's difficult because there are a lot of people there who are older, who are maybe not as sensitive to certain things. And at the end of the day, the person who makes the decisions is Vince McMahon. You know, even today, Vince has a lot of power and a lot of say-so in what goes on the air. And, you know, Vince isn't the world's most sensitive person.
I think just to give a little bit of clarity, you wrote for WWE. Were there any storylines in particular that you were very involved in, that just so maybe our audience gets an idea of the type of stuff you're working on?
Well, I was there in 2019, and I was on SmackDown, on the home team on SmackDown. And the thing that we were the most concerned with, thing that we were most involved with, ironically, was Kofi Mania. And that was a storyline that obviously traded on a lot of sort of attitudes about race, ideas about who should or shouldn't be the champion. And I never felt like that storyline was disrespectful. I never felt like that storyline was treated in a way where Kofi came off as, kind of a token champion. Like, that was a really great storyline. I'm very proud of the small part that I had to play in that. And I think, we can debate how it turned out at the end when he lost to Brock Lesnar, which I found out about in April. We were talking about, like, the plan is first SmackDown on Fox, Brock is going to come in and he's going to win the title and it's going to be a quick match. And that's exactly what happened after I left. That was the way that it turned out. But the writers in the room with me were always incredibly aware of what we were doing and why it was important. Steve Guerreri, who was the head writer at the time, Road Dogg, Chris Dunn. Chris has always been a great friend of mine, still is a great friend of mine, was brought up in the lawsuit. I don't agree with that part. I think I can speak to the way that Chris behaved in the office, the way that Chris treated the talent, the way the talent appreciates him specifically, Bianca, Tez, all of those people that would be concerned about certain things if something bad was to come up, something bad was pitched to them. They love Chris. And I can only say good things about Chris Dunn. And if people feel like, Chris is an issue or that something that he did was inappropriate, I just can't agree with that, because I know the kind of person that he is. I know Steve Guerreri and all those people that I worked with really wanted that Kofi Mania storyline to be as great as possible. And I think you can speak to any Black person in wrestling and they'll point to that storyline being incredibly important and meaningful to them. It was to me when I was at WrestleMania.
We know Kofi, Woods, Big E, all of them have, seems like a lot of freedom, a lot of say when it comes to that stuff. And when they've talked about the storyline, they said, well, why does you people have to be like Black people? Like, why can't it just be like nerds and things like that? So was that part of that storyline as well? As like, we think we're referencing like minority Black people here, but it's referencing just an encompassing kind of like minority in this situation.
Yeah, I mean, any storyline in wrestling should be universal. There's in any writing, specificity is important, but the ability for you as the viewer to empathize with the characters is what allows everybody to jump on board and get excited about it, to get excited about what's going to happen in the match. Is the hero going to triumph over the villain? Obviously, that the race element of it was implied. It was not explicit. We never talked about Kofi being Black specifically. But we did talk about the challenges that he faced, the fact that people like him had never really gotten that chance. Obviously The Rock and Booker T had been champions before, but Kofi was an avatar for every fan. And anytime a kind of underdog character blows up in wrestling, if it's Daniel Bryan, if it's Hangman Page, whoever it is, you want the fans to identify with him. Cody Rhodes is a good example of that now. Cody is an underdog, even though he's got the pyro and the great entrance and the music and the great suits and all of that stuff. He's still treated like the underdog. That's why he lost at WrestleMania, is to give him more of that underdog sensibility to his character. You want everybody to get on board. You want everybody to feel like that wrestler in the ring right now is fighting not just for him or for her, but for you as the viewer. And that makes you latch on to them. And that's why people love Sami Zayn.
We got a super chat from Ryan Sullivan here. In Dave's experience, would these ideas have all been verbally submitted, or will they be written documents made available?
Well, that's a great question. During my time, we didn't really use Slack or anything like that. Every week, we would all submit a version of the show, and that would have, promo language and stuff like that. Basically a rundown from segment 1 to segment 11 of SmackDown, what was going to happen. So there were written things, but a lot of stuff just gets kind of said. I wanted Elias to hit Roman Reigns with a guitar in a segment, and someone said, you can't have Elias hit the world champion with a guitar, or not. He wasn't the champion, but like, you can't have him hit like this big top guy with a guitar. I wanted Mickey James and Elias to be in like a Star is Born parody. That didn't happen. I wanted to destroy the Best in the World trophy. None of that stuff is written down, but there are things that I said. I really wanted to destroy that trophy. Oh my God. I wanted the Miz to like run it over with a car or smash with a sledgehammer or something. And I think it was Shane who said, no, we're not going to destroy my trophy.
What was he going to do? Keep it and walk around with it backstage? Come on. This is great stuff.
He probably still has it in his office somewhere.
And by the way, I love the idea of being like, we can't hit our top star with a guitar. We'll throw dog food at him, though. That's totally cool. So,
I mean, it's all about what Vince likes. And
right.
In a lot of these kind of like broad caricatures are things that Vince likes. I can't speak to what happened after I left, but I'm sure he thought that Apollo Crews doing that accent was going to get over. Because you look at the history of WWE, and there's tons of examples of stereotypical characters. This is not a new thing. This is not a new phenomenon.
So I'm going to piggyback off of that when it comes to Vince liking something. These pitches, especially Mansoor being behind 9/11 when he was 7 years old, I don't think you can defend any of this stuff. But when you're pitching something, like how much of it goes through your brain of like, I think this is terrible. I don't think this should be on television at all. But you know who's probably going to like this and who's probably going to approve this? The man up top there. So let me just throw it out there and see what happens with this. Like how much goes through your brain when you're pitching this kind of stuff?
Well, for me personally, I would never pitch something I didn't believe in, that I didn't think was going to be good TV. Maybe other people in the company would do that or have done that in the past. The thing is, like, there's a very structured system at WWE, probably still, where you're in the room, you're pitching ideas, the show gets put together, and then it is presented to Vince McMahon or Triple H or whomever is in charge at the time. They're the ones who are the filter. The head writers say, this is what we're going to do. And then it goes to Vince a couple days before the show, day before the show, whenever it is, or Triple H. And then it's finalized. Finalized in quotes, because I can say from experience, the Raw after WrestleMania 35 in New York, the one that I worked on, everything got changed. The whole show got torn up, and we were writing promos while the show was live. So things change, but again, can't speak to the specifics of the lawsuit because I wasn't there, but I can say that any writer who comes up with something in a room, they're not necessarily ever going to get that to Vince. So don't pitch for Vince, pitch for what you think your head writer is going to like, and then they take it to Vince.
So one of the things in that lawsuit was Bianca Belair pushing back on some stuff that was written for her. When you were at WWE, in your experience, did you have wrestlers kind of pushing back on some creative, or were more just like, yeah, this is fine, this is cool? Like what was that process like when you were working with other wrestlers and trying to collaborate?
They always push back. They always push back because they're very protective of their characters. I can tell you about, and I've talked about this before, the former Revival, FTR, really hated a promo that I wrote for them, the Raw after WrestleMania. They thought I was making fun of them being from the South because I had them say y'all or something. Like there was specific accent kind of word choice in there. And they're like, they think us hillbillies talk like this, blah, 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 blah. They didn't know I had written the promo. I was just producing the pre-tape. So it happens. It's going to happen. Eventually, they build trust with you. Maybe you hope they like what you have to say, and they can work with you. And there's kind of a collaboration. I can't speak to Bianca and what happened, but I can say that Bianca worked very closely with Chris Dunn. So did the Street Profits. They're still very close, and they still speak regularly. And Chris always tried to make their promo segments the best they could. All that stuff with the Viking Raiders and the Street Profits was stuff that Chris worked on, and they were very proud of the stuff that they came up with and they got to do during the pandemic. And you're lucky if the talent really starts to like you and trust the work that you do. And Chris was an example of somebody who was able to get that trust. Miz is always a very collaborative person with the writers. I remember Sami Zayn would be in the writers' room very often working on his promos. So yeah, it's like any creative situation. You are writing something for a performer to speak on live television most of the time. And so there's not a lot of room for error. And so they're involved. They want to do the best that they can. And if you're in a top spot, you have a lot more leeway than somebody who isn't. And Bianca specifically, I think, really loves her character and is very protective of her character. And more often than not, what she does on TV is what she wants to do.
Were there any pitches that you heard that you just kind of roll your eyes at? Because a lot of writers will say, what you see on television is obviously what gets through. What you don't see on television, you can only just kind of imagine what you don't see. Gewurz is mention a bunch of different stuff that had been pitched that didn't make it. Like, where there's something that was pitched, there's like, what are we thinking here? What are we doing here, guys?
Oh, where it was like a terrible idea that didn't get on TV?
Whether it's a terrible idea, whether it was a racist idea, however the idea came about, it's just like, no, we just can't do this at all.
There's always just kind of things that are said that aren't necessarily pitches. Like, again, it's such a free-flowing environment that things may not actually get to the point where they go to Vince. Like, they're not really pitched until they go to Vince. And I remember, Bruce Pritchard had a lot of ideas for the Kabuki Warriors. I think maybe even was that the Kabuki Warriors? What were they called?
Yeah,
Asuka and Kairi.
Yeah, he really loved that name, and I thought it was terrible. I thought the idea was like patronizing and lame, but it got on TV. The Mandy Rose, Sonya Deville storyline. This is another Asuka thing. That was supposed to culminate in a romance between Sonya and Mandy at WrestleMania 35, where it was a triple threat for the SmackDown Women's Championship, and Mandy was going to win because Sonya would lay down for her, and then they would embrace and kiss in the middle of the ring. And I said, "Oh boy, you're gonna do this. I understand why this could be great." Because this is representation, it's very necessary. To WWE's credit, they went to GLAAD. Stephanie McMahon was on the phone with them. Like, can we do this? Can we make this palatable and sensitive to the situation with queer people in America? Can we make this a good angle? And the thing that I said was, great, but at WrestleMania, 60,000 people are going to be rooting for Asuka. And they're supposed to be the baby faces at the end of this. They're going to be booed out of the building, and you're going to have two women kissing in the middle of the ring and people booing because they love Asuka so much. And people do love Asuka. And every time I think WWE thinks, well, they can just kind of beat her and whatever, who cares? She's just an action figure and you move her around. They forget that people have a really intense relationship with her positively. Even if they tried to make her a heel, they'd still root for her because she's cool, she's great in the ring. And eventually that storyline didn't get done because they decided to put the belt on Charlotte. But it could have turned out poorly, even though the best intentions were there. And they really did want to make a good storyline. And Sonya was involved and Mandy was involved, and they were very excited about doing this. At the end of the day, you got to do it right. And I think that would have been the wrong way to do it, because you would have been beating a babyface that people love at WrestleMania, when there's so much complaint in the wrestling community around how she's always losing. Asuka specifically. Pronouns. Got to watch out for the pronouns.
As we start to wrap up, I'm curious for your opinion. You were in it for a while, and you mentioned, there are a lot of older voices who maybe don't see things the way that, the younger generation do, if you will. Is there a point in which you think WWE, wrestling in total, in general, will start to view the benefit of telling more nuanced, balanced stories that are not full of what we've been seeing?
Well, a lot of those people have to retire. I'm not going to say die, because that's kind of mean. I don't want any of those guys to die because they're legends in the wrestling business. But I don't know if we need to continue to hear what Michael Hayes has to say about storylines. I think he can put together an amazing match. But do I need to hear Michael Hayes or Vince McMahon or Bruce Pritchard tell people in their 30s, people in their 20s, children, what is entertaining? This is no knock on them. They've all done amazing things in the wrestling business and given me years, decades of enjoyment. And they were all very nice to me. Michael Hayes and I had a run-in with Michael Hayes once where I was watching a Dodger game during the Hall of Fame ceremony and backstage, and he got mad at me because I think it was ultimately disrespectful to the event and the guys and girls who were part of it, and so I felt bad. But I was also kind of just like, why am I here? I'm not working. Anyway, I think there needs to be more youthful energy in wrestling. I think AEW has done a good job of presenting their characters in a way that is more appealing to younger audiences. WWE, in a lot of ways, Roman Reigns and the Bloodline, I think, are very modern characters and very exciting and cool. And even though they're heels, people still think of them as cool. But the people making the decisions are old. And at some point, those people need to move aside. I think Tony Khan, as a booker of AEW, is doing a good job, but he's not surrounding himself with younger people. He's not surrounding himself with a team of writers who can say, this is cool, this is not cool. Not to say that Tony doesn't know what's cool or whatever. Tony's probably my age and as checked in as I can be in my mid 30s. But I think you need to have that youthful energy, and that's what's so exciting about AEW and on some level WWE. But there needs to be more, and the more people of a certain age step aside, the better it will be for everyone. That there will be less of this kind of tension between the sensibilities of 2023 and the sensibilities of 1987. That's the hardest part about working there, is those guys don't get it sometimes, and you wish they did.
Dave, I want to thank you for joining us today. Much appreciated. Let everybody know, and thank you for the conversation and the insight. Let everybody know where they can find you at.
I am on Twitter at Dave_Schilling. If you want to send me a Blue Sky invite, please do. I'm always, the DMs are open for that. Yeah, thank you for having me on. It was a pleasure, and I was glad to speak on this subject.
And did you find Nia Jax?
No, those were jokes. There were some people who were like, "Oh, that guy's a creep. Why is he stalking Nia Jax?" I was just stalking Nia Jax. She is a very nice person. I don't know her at all. I did not get to interact with her much, other than her almost hitting me with a golf cart. That's about it.
There we go. We got clarity on that, everybody. Quit giving Dave a hard time on that. Thank you very much for joining us, Dave. Much appreciated. Everyone go follow him on Twitter. He gives great insight, not only on wrestling, but other topics as well. And the WrestleMania 35 thread was just tremendous stuff. A lot of good behind the scenes stuff on that. So thank you, Dave. Enjoy the rest of your day.